The King and the Queen. In August, the Beatles were back in the United States. 56,000 fans saw them at a concert in New York. At the time, it was the biggest concert crowd ever. The concert was exciting, but Ringo's memories of it weren't good. At times, John was joking too much on stage, in Ringo's opinion. Also, not many people at the concert really heard the band. Like most Beatles concerts, the sound of the crowd was louder than the music. The Beatles couldn't hear much of the music either, so, of course, it was difficult to play well. "I always wanted to play with good players," remembers Ringo, but now the band was playing badly on stage, and nobody was listening. On the same tour, the Beatles met one of their favourite singers, Elvis Presley. "It was one of the great meetings of my life," Paul has said. The boys and the King had a good time, but years later the band discovered that Elvis was worried about the Beatles' success in his country. He asked the American government to send them home. Back in Britain, the government gave all the Beatles the MBE. This award was often given to successful business people or to people who fought bravely for their country. Many Britons were angry. How could the government give this award to a pop group? But the usual crowd of screaming fans were outside Buckingham Palace when the Queen gave them the award in October 1965. The Beatles were nervous. George later remembered that they rested and had a cigarette in the toilets in Buckingham Palace. Rubber Soul. The next album, Rubber Soul, came out in December 1965. It was another big step for the band. They were exploring different kinds of music and different subjects. In My Life was a beautiful song about places and people in the past. Even the album's love songs weren't the simple love songs of the band's early days. One of the most interesting songs on the album was John's Norwegian Wood. Many people wanted to know what the song meant. It was about a girl, but he didn't want his wife Cynthia to know this. George played the Indian musical instrument the sitar on Norwegian Wood. He first noticed the instrument in an Indian restaurant in the film Help. This was the start of George's long interest in Indian music and ideas. Story behind the song. Around the time of Rubber Soul, the single Day Tripper, We Can Work It Out, reached number 1. Paul wrote most of We Can Work It Out, and John wrote the middle part. This song showed the differences between the two men clearly. The main part was more hopeful, as Paul sang, "Try to see it my way." John's part of the song was less hopeful. "Life is very short, and there's no time." The band's success continued with Paul's Paperback Writer in 1966. It was their first single that wasn't about love. The music was becoming less and less simple too. But now the Beatles faced a new problem. How could they play the songs in concert?